Commander Jake Morrison felt sweat drip down his back as he stood in the massive chamber. The room was so big that he could not see the ceiling. Giant beings made of crystal and light towered over him. Their bodies glowed with colors that hurt. His eyes to look at. These were the rulers of the galaxy, and they were not happy with humanity. The human delegation stood on a small platform in the center of the room. Jake looked around at his team. Captain Lisa Rodriguez stood next to him, her face calm, but her hands shaking slightly. Admiral Peter Collins was behind them, his old face showing no emotion. They were the only humans in a room full of aliens who wanted to destroy their species. Zeph Kaller spoke first. He was the leader of the Vorthan race, a being made of living crystal that stood 20 feet tall. His voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. Humans, you have been called here to face judgment. Your species has grown too fast. You have taken too many worlds. You have upset the balance of the galaxy. Jake tried to keep his voice steady. We have followed all the rules. We have only settled on empty worlds. We have not attacked anyone. The crystal being's light grew brighter with anger. Rules? You speak of rules? The Zelthani Empire has ruled this galaxy for 50,000 years. The Korath Dominion has kept peace for 30,000 years. Your species has been in space for less than 300 years. You are children playing with fire. A new voice spoke from across the room. This one belonged to a creature that looked like a giant insect with too many arms. The young humans think they can do whatever they want. They build colonies on world after world. They spread like a disease across the stars. Jake felt his anger rising, but kept it inside. These aliens thought they owned the galaxy just because they were older. But humanity had earned its place among the stars through hard work and sacrifice. They had built their colonies with their own hands. They had explored dangerous space that these ancient races were too scared to enter. Captain Rodriguez stepped forward. She was Earth's best diplomat, but even she looked small next to these giant beings. Honored members of the Council, humanity seeks only to find new homes for our people. Our homeworld is crowded. We need room to grow. We have never threatened any other species. A being made of pure energy floating in a glowing field laughed. The sound was like breaking glass. Threatened? Your very existence is a threat. You breed too fast. You expand too quickly. You ask too many questions about things that should be left alone. Admiral Collins spoke for the first time. His voice was quiet, but everyone could hear it. What exactly are you accusing us of? Zeph Kaller raised one of his crystal arms. The air above them filled with images made of light. Jake could see human colonies spread across dozens of star systems. He could see human ships exploring the outer edges of known space. He could see human scientists studying ancient ruins that the older races had declared forbidden. This is what you have done in just 50 years, the crystal being said. You have claimed 37 worlds. You have built fleets that rival our own. You send your ships into the dark spaces between galaxies where even we fear to go. You disturb things that have slept for millions of years. The images changed to show massive alien fleets. Ships that looked like living creatures floated next to geometric vessels that bent light around them. Crystal ships that seemed to be made of frozen starlight hung next to metal constructs covered in weapons. Jake had never seen so many warships in one place. 12 races have joined together to stop you, Zeph Kaller continued. Our combined fleets wait at the edge of your space. We have weapons that can crack planets. We have ships older than your civilization. We have power you cannot imagine. Jake felt his heart racing. The human fleet was strong, but it was nothing compared to what he was seeing. Earth had maybe 200 warships scattered across dozens of systems. The aliens had thousands of vessels each one more advanced than anything humanity had ever built. But Admiral Collins did not look worried. In fact, Jake thought he saw the old man smile slightly. "Impressive," Collins said. "But what do you want from us?" The insect-like being clicked its mandibles together. "Withdraw from your outer colonies. Return to your inner systems. Stop your expansion. Accept limits on your population growth. Allow us to place observers on your worlds to make sure you obey. And if we refuse?" Rodriguez asked. The energy being's light grew brighter. "Then we will remove you from those worlds ourselves. We will destroy your colonies. We will scatter your fleets. We will force you back to your home system and keep you there until you learn your place." Jake looked around the chamber at the alien faces staring down at them. Some looked angry. Others looked disgusted. A few seemed almost sad, as if they regretted what they were about to do. But none of them looked like they would change their minds. "How long do we have to decide?" Jake asked. 7 Earth days, Zeph Collar said. "That is more time than your species deserves. Use it wisely." As the human delegation was led out of the chamber, Jake heard the aliens talking among themselves. They spoke in languages he could not understand, but their tone was clear. They thought this was already over. They thought humanity would surrender without a fight, or be crushed if they tried to resist in the corridor outside. Admiral Collins moved close to Jake and Rodriguez. He spoke so quietly that only they could hear him. "Send a message to Earth. Immediately. Use code 77 Alpha. Tell them it's time." "Time for what?" Jake asked. Collins looked older than his 70 years, but his eyes were sharp. "Time to wake up the old fleet." Rodriguez looked confused. "What old fleet?" "Our entire Navy is already mobilized." "Not that fleet," Collins said. "The one that's been sleeping in the dark for longer than these aliens have had their empires. The one our ancestors built before they went to sleep themselves." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard rumors. Stories that some of the older officers told when they had been drinking. Tales of human ships hidden in the deep spaces between stars. Vessels that used technology no one understood anymore. Weapons that could do impossible things, but those were just stories, weren't they? Collins seemed to read his thoughts. "Commander, there are things about human history that are not in any textbook. Things that were classified so deep that most people forgot they ever existed. These aliens think they know what humanity is capable of. They're about to learn they're wrong." As they walked toward their ship, Jake looked back at the massive structure that housed the Galactic Council. It was built from materials that seemed to glow with their own light. It was older than human civilization. It was a symbol of power that had lasted for thousands of years. But for the first time since arriving here, Jake felt hope. If Admiral Collins was right, if there really was another human fleet hidden somewhere in the darkness, then maybe humanity had a chance. Maybe the galaxy was about to learn that humans were not as young and helpless as they appeared. Outside their ship, Jake could see the alien fleets gathering in the distance. Thousands of vessels from 12 different species, all united in their desire to put humanity in its place. They looked unstoppable. Jake hoped they were wrong about that too. He hoped that somewhere in the cold emptiness between the stars, ancient human ships were beginning to wake up. Ships that had been waiting for this moment. Ships that would remind the galaxy that humanity had been here longer than anyone remembered. The 7-day countdown had begun. Dr. Susan Walker floated through the dark tunnel, carved deep inside the asteroid. Her flashlight beam cut through the blackness, showing walls made of metal that seemed to drink up the light. The metal was unlike anything she had ever seen before. It was smooth and dark, and when she touched it, it felt warm, even though the asteroid was frozen in the emptiness of space. "How deep does this thing go?" asked Captain Ryan Martinez as he followed behind her. His voice echoed strangely in the tunnel, as if the walls were changing the sound somehow. According to the maps we found in the Earth archives, this facility goes down for at least 5 miles, Susan replied. She had been studying the ancient files for 3 years now. Files that were buried so deep in government databases that most people had forgotten they existed. Files that spoke of something called Storage Unit 7, Lieutenant Kelly Brooks brought up the rear of their small team. She was carrying scanning equipment that beeped quietly as they moved deeper into the asteroid. The metal in these walls is not showing up on any of our sensors. It's like it's not really there, but we can see it and touch it. Susan nodded. She had expected this. The reports from the original Discovery team 60 years ago had mentioned the same thing. The facilities seemed to exist partly in normal space and partly somewhere else. Scientists had tried to figure out how it worked, but the technology was beyond anything humanity understood. They had been walking for an hour when the tunnel suddenly opened into a vast chamber. Susan's flashlight beam disappeared into the darkness above them. She could not see the ceiling or the far walls. The space felt enormous, like they were standing inside a hollow mountain. "Lights," Susan called out. Captain Martinez activated the portable floodlights they had brought with them. Brilliant white light filled the chamber, and all 3 humans stopped breathing for a moment. Ships. Dozens of ships. Vessels so large, they seemed like artificial mountains floating in the darkness. Their hulls were the same dark metal as the walls, smooth and seamless. No welding marks. No bolts or rivets. No visible weapons or engines. They looked like they had been grown rather than built. "My God," Kelly whispered. "How long have these been here?" Susan checked her tablet. The files she had decoded were incomplete, but they gave some clues. According to the records I found, these ships were put into storage approximately 47,000 years ago, during the last ice age on Earth. Ryan laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "That's impossible. Humans were barely using stone tools 47,000 years ago. We were living in caves." "Were we?" Susan asked quietly. She had been wondering about this for months as she studied the ancient files. The carbon dating on this facility shows it's definitely that old. The genetic locks on the entrance only respond to human DNA. And look at this. She led them to the nearest wall. Under the bright lights, they could see writing carved into the dark metal. The symbols were clearly human in origin, but they were not English or any modern language. They looked like a mix of Egyptian hieroglyphs and mathematical equations. "I've been working with linguists at the university," Susan explained. "We think this is an ancient form of human writing, a language that existed before recorded history. Some of the symbols match cave paintings found in Europe and Africa." Kelly was running her scanner over one of the smaller ships. Even the smallest vessel in the chamber was the size of a modern battleship. The energy readings from these things are off the charts. There's definitely power running through them, but it's not any kind of energy we understand. The ships are in some kind of hibernation mode, Susan said. The files mention something called a sleep protocol. They were designed to wait until they were needed again. Ryan looked around at the massive vessels surrounding them. Needed for what? The files are not clear about that. But there are references to something called the Last War, a conflict that threatened to destroy not just humanity, but all life in the galaxy. These ships were built to fight in that war. They walked deeper into the chamber. More ships came into view. Some were shaped like giant arrows. Others looked almost organic, with curves and flowing lines that reminded Susan of sea creatures. A few had geometries that hurt to look at directly, as if they existed in more dimensions than the human eye could process. "There are different types," Kelly observed, "like they were built for different purposes." Susan nodded. The files mentioned command ships, battle cruisers, something called reality anchors, and vessels designated as world killers. I don't know what most of those terms mean. They reached the center of the chamber, where a single ship sat alone. This one was different from the others. It was smaller, about the size of a modern destroyer, but it radiated a sense of age and power that made the humans feel small. Its hull was covered in the same strange writing they had seen on the walls. "This one looks important," Ryan said. Susan checked her tablet again. "According to the files, this is the command vessel, the ship that controls all the others. Its designation is Eternal Vigilance." As if responding to her words, the ship's hull began to glow with a soft amber light. The humans stepped back in alarm, but nothing else happened. The light pulsed gently, like a heartbeat. "It's responding to us being here," Kelly said, her scanner beeping rapidly. "All the ships are starting to show increased energy activity." Susan felt a mix of excitement and fear. These ships had been sleeping for longer than human civilization had existed. What would happen when they woke up? Were they still loyal to humanity? Did they even remember their original purpose? "We need to get word back to Earth Command," Ryan said. "Admiral Collins needs to know what we found." "Wait," Susan said. She was studying the files on her tablet more carefully. "There's something else. This facility is not the only one." The records mention storage units scattered throughout human space, hidden in asteroids, buried on dead moons, concealed in the empty space between stars. "How many ships are we talking about?" Kelly asked. Susan did the math in her head. "If each facility has as many ships as this one, and there are the number of facilities the files suggest, we could be looking at thousands of vessels." The implications hit all three of them at the same time. Humanity was not defenseless against the Galactic Council's ultimatum. Hidden in the darkness, waiting for the right moment, was a fleet that dwarfed anything the modern galaxy had ever seen. Ships built by humans who had technology that seemed like magic. But who were those ancient humans? How had they built ships that could manipulate reality itself? And why had they hidden their fleet instead of using it to conquer the galaxy? "There's more writing here," Kelly called out. She had found a section of wall covered in the ancient symbols. "This looks different from the rest. More recent, maybe." Susan joined her and studied the markings. She had been learning to read the ancient language, and these symbols were clearer than the others. Slowly, she began to translate. "When the children of Earth face extinction, when the stars themselves turn against them, wake us. We are the guardians of humanity's true destiny. We are the sword and shield of our species. We will return when the galaxy forgets what we once were." The three humans stood in silence, surrounded by ships that predated civilization. Ships that their own ancestors had built for a purpose they were only beginning to understand. Ryan activated his communicator. "Control, this is Deep Team Alpha. We need immediate priority contact with Admiral Collins. Tell him we've found what he was looking for. Tell him the old stories are true." Above them, the ancient ships continued their patient wait, their hulls glowing softly in the darkness. Soon, very soon, their long sleep would end. Fleet Admiral Gary Thompson stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched something impossible happen. The ancient ship they had found in the asteroid was coming to life after sleeping for 47,000 years. The vessel, called Eternal Vigilance, was rising from its hiding place, and reality itself seemed to bend around it. "All systems are showing green," reported Chief Engineer Monica Davis from her station. Her voice was filled with disbelief. "Hull integrity is perfect. Power levels are steady. It's like this ship was built yesterday, instead of before humans learned to farm." The ship was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. Its hull flowed like liquid metal that had been frozen in the middle of moving. Patterns covered its surface that seemed to shift and change when Gary looked directly at them. As the vessel powered up, waves of blue and gold light ran along its hull like electrical currents. "Sir, we're getting a transmission from the Ancient Ship," announced Communications Officer Troy Jenkins. His hands were shaking as he worked his controls. "The signal is—" It's in perfect English. Gary felt his heart skip a beat. How could a ship that was older than human civilization speak their language? He nodded to Troy. "Put it through." The voice that filled the bridge was warm and friendly, like a grandfather talking to his grandchildren. But there was something in the accent that did not belong to any country on Earth. It was human, but different somehow. "Greetings, descendants. I am Eternal Vigilance. I have been waiting a very long time for you to need us again." Gary found his voice after a moment of shock. "Eternal Vigilance, this is Fleet Admiral Gary Thompson of the Earth Defense Forces. Can you explain what you are?" "We are humanity's true fleet," the ship replied. "We were built when your species faced complete destruction from enemies beyond this galaxy. Your ancestors created us to be guardians of the human race. When the great threat was defeated, they ordered us to sleep until the day came when humanity would face another enemy too powerful to defeat alone." On the tactical screens around the bridge, more lights were appearing throughout the solar system. Ancient ships were powering up in asteroid fields, rising from the surfaces of dead moons, and materializing in the empty space between worlds. Each vessel was different from the others, as if they had been crafted by artists instead of engineers. Commander Beth Carter was studying her displays with wide eyes. "Admiral, I'm detecting 47 vessels in this system alone. Energy readings from just one of these ships are higher than our entire modern fleet combined." "That is correct," Eternal Vigilance confirmed. "In this sector of space, there are 47 ships of various types and purposes. Throughout all of human space, approximately 1,200 vessels wait in hidden locations. In the deep void between galaxies, where we have slept the longest, many thousands more await the call to return." Gary felt dizzy. Thousands of ships like this one? Each more powerful than anything humanity had built in 3 centuries of spaceflight? "What kind of weapons do you carry?" "We do not carry weapons in the way you understand them," the ancient ship explained. "We are weapons. We are built from the basic forces that hold the universe together. Your ancestors learned to shape reality itself when they created us." To demonstrate, Eternal Vigilance seemed to flicker and become see-through for a moment before becoming solid again. "We exist in multiple dimensions at the same time. We can step outside normal space and time when we need to. We can be in many places at once. We can make things that exist stop existing." Troy was monitoring communications from across human space. "Admiral, I'm getting reports from every sector. Ancient facilities are activating on dozens of worlds. Ships are rising from ocean floors, emerging from underground caverns, and appearing in orbit around planets where our sensors never detected anything before." Monica was running diagnostics on the readings they were getting from the ancient fleet. "Sir, the materials these ships are made from don't show up properly on our scanners. It's like they're built from something that exists between the spaces of normal matter. Your science is not advanced enough to fully understand our construction," Eternal Vigilance said gently. "We are woven from quantum foam and dark matter. We are held together by forces that your physics barely recognizes. We are alive in ways that your biology cannot explain." Gary looked out at the growing fleet of ancient vessels surrounding his flagship. Each one was unique and impossible. Some looked like they were built from crystallized starlight. Others seemed to be made of liquid shadow. A few appeared to exist as mathematical equations made physical. "The Galactic Council has given us 7 days to surrender our colonies," Gary said. "Their combined fleets are waiting at the edge of our territory. 12 species, thousands of ships, weapons that can destroy planets. How do you assess our chances against them? The ancient ship's voice carried a note of quiet confidence. The council species are like children playing with simple toys compared to what humanity once was. They have forgotten that this galaxy has seen wars older than their civilizations. They think they are the first to reach the stars, but they are wrong. On the main screen, an image appeared showing the galaxy as it had been 50,000 years ago. It was full of civilizations that no longer existed. Hundreds of species that had built great empires, only to vanish from history. The Korath, the Vorthans, the Zelfani, and all the others, Eternal Vigilance continued. They are the descendants of races that served humanity in the ancient times. When your ancestors made the great sacrifice to stop the Devourers, these younger species inherited empty worlds and forgot their history. They convinced themselves they were the first to build great civilizations. Gary felt the pieces of a vast puzzle falling into place. You're saying humanity ruled the galaxy before? Not ruled, protected. Your ancestors were the guardians of all life in this galaxy. When creatures from the void between galaxies came to consume everything that lived, humanity stood against them. The cost of victory was so high that most of your species chose to step outside normal existence rather than continue in a galaxy they had saved but could no longer fully inhabit. The bridge was silent as everyone tried to process this revelation. Humanity was not a young species reaching for the stars. They were an ancient race returning to reclaim their birthright. The small population that remained behind was meant to rebuild human civilization slowly, the ship continued. You were supposed to rediscover your heritage when you faced another threat that required your true power. The Council's ultimatum was the trigger we have been waiting for. More reports came in from across human space. Ancient technologies were activating on human worlds. Manufacturing facilities that could build new ships in hours instead of years. Defensive systems that could protect entire star systems. Research stations that contained scientific knowledge beyond anything modern humanity had imagined. Lieutenant Paul Chang at the sensor station looked up from his displays. Admiral, we're detecting massive energy buildups throughout the sector. It's like the entire region of space is waking up. Because it is, Eternal Vigilance replied. Humanity is. Remembering what it truly is. The galaxy will never be the same. Gary thought about the Galactic Council's arrogant ultimatum. 12 ancient species demanding that humanity bow down and accept limits on their expansion. They thought humans were young and weak. They were about to learn how wrong they were. What happens when we face the Council's fleets? Gary asked. We will remind them of the natural order of things, the ship answered. We will show them that humanity has returned to take its place as the galaxy's protectors. They can choose to accept this or be swept aside. Outside the bridge windows, the ancient fleet continued to grow as more ships emerged from their long hiding places. Humanity's true power was awakening, and the galaxy would tremble. The Galactic Council's massive fleet hung in space like a collection of deadly stars. 12 different species had brought their finest warships to teach humanity a lesson. Zeph Collar stood on the bridge of his flagship Eternal Supremacy, watching the tactical displays that showed the pathetic human response to their ultimatum. Only 43 human ships, laughed Admiral Kithvaran of the Korath Dominion. His insect-like face showed amusement. They send barely a squadron to face our combined might. Do they think this small force can stand against 12 civilizations? The Korath ships were living creatures bred for war. Their biomechanical hulls pulsed with organic weapons that could tear planets apart. Next to them floated the crystal battleships of the Vorthans, each one the size of a city and powered by captured stars. The Zelfani had brought their geometric vessels that bent space itself into weapons. Perhaps they planned to surrender, suggested the ethereal collective's representative. The being was made of pure energy contained in a shimmering field. Their species may have finally learned wisdom. Zeph Kaller studied the approaching human fleet. At the front was a ship he did not recognize. It was sleek and beautiful, but hardly impressive compared to the massive dreadnoughts surrounding it. The human vessels moved in a standard military formation, approaching at normal speed. Unknown vessel. This is Zeph Kaller, Prime Speaker of the Galactic Council, he broadcast across. All frequencies. You are outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. The response came in a voice that seemed to carry the weight of ages. It was calm and confident in a way that made Zeph Kaller's crystal form vibrate with unease. This is Eternal Vigilance, speaking for the human fleet. We decline your demand. Your defiance will cost your species everything, Zeph Kaller declared. He raised one crystalline appendage to signal the attack. All ships, prepare to fire. Show these. Young upstarts the price of challenging their betters. That was when space itself began to change. More ships appeared around the human fleet, not arriving from hyperspace or emerging from warp. They simply materialized as if they had always been there, and reality was just now remembering them. Dozens became hundreds. Hundreds became thousands. The void filled with vessels that seemed to be carved from starlight, and Shadow Dot Captain Nora Briggs watched from the bridge of her destroyer, Liberty, as the ancient human fleet revealed itself. Ships larger than space stations hung motionless. In the vacuum, their hulls rippled with energy patterns that hurt to look at directly. Some appeared to be built from crystallized time itself. Others seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Council forces, announced Eternal Vigilance. You are surrounded and outclassed. This is your only warning. Withdraw from human space immediately. Admiral Kith Voran's mandibles clicked together in rage. We do not fear human tricks and illusions. All ships, open fire. The Council fleet unleashed everything they had. Planet killing. Beams lanced out toward the human vessels. Weapons that could crack moons fired in perfect coordination. Biomechanical missiles that could devour entire fleets streaked through space. The combined firepower of 12 civilizations lit up the darkness. Like a new sun, every shot passed harmlessly through the ancient. Human ships dot the energy beams simply disappeared when they touched the strange hulls. The missiles phased through, their targets as if they were ghosts. The planet crackers struck vessels that flickered in and out of normal space, avoiding damage by existing somewhere else entirely. Impossible. Zeph Kaller's voice carried across the communication channels. Nothing can survive that barrage. You are correct, Eternal Vigilance replied calmly. Nothing in your understanding of physics can survive what you just threw at us. But we are not bound by your understanding of reality. Now it was the human fleet's turn to demonstrate their power. What followed was not a battle. It was a lesson in the difference between ancient wisdom and youthful arrogance. The human ships moved like living things. They flowed through space in ways that violated every law of physics the Council knew. Some vessels split into multiple copies of themselves. Others grew larger or smaller as needed. A few seemed to reach through space itself to touch their enemies from impossible distances. When the ancient ships fired back, their weapons did not just destroy, they unmade their targets. Matter simply stopped existing where the beams touched. Entire sections of Council warships vanished as if they had never been built. Crews found themselves floating in vacuum as their vessels were edited out of reality around them. A Zelfani dreadnought that had terrorized star systems for centuries tried to escape by bending space around itself. One of the human ships followed it into the twisted dimension, caught it, and gently placed it back in normal space with its weapons and engines removed. The crew was unharmed, but completely helpless. Lieutenant Commander Alex Stone watched the impossible battle from his position, aboard the carrier New Horizon. "My God," he whispered, "what were our ancestors?" A Korath bioship tried to adapt to the human weapons by evolving new defenses. The ancient ship facing it simply reached out with invisible hands and put the living vessel to sleep. The bioship's crew woke up later to find their ship floating peacefully in space, completely unharmed, but unwilling to fight anymore. The Vorthan crystal ships attempted to coordinate their attacks using quantum communication. The human fleet responded by creating temporal loops that made the alien ships repeat the same actions over and over until they exhausted their power supplies, trying to fire the same shot for eternity. Within 10 minutes, a pride of 12 civilizations was reduced to floating debris and fleeing survivors. Most of the Council ships had not been destroyed. They had been disabled, disarmed, or simply convinced to stop fighting. Some had been teleported back to their home systems with their crews. Unharmed, but thoroughly humbled, Admiral Kithvoran found his flagship floating dead in space. His weapons would not fire. His engines would not start. Even his life support was dependent on the mercy of the human fleet. "This is impossible," he transmitted. "We are the masters of this galaxy. We have ruled for thousands of years. You have ruled for a brief moment in cosmic time," Eternal Vigilance corrected him. "Your species were our servants when we last walked among the stars. You inherited empty worlds when we chose to sleep, and you convinced yourselves you were the first to reach them." Zeph Kaller's crystal form was flickering with disbelief. "Servants? We are the Vorthans. We have controlled this galaxy for 50 millennia. 50,000 years ago, your people were barely beginning to use tools," the ancient ship replied. "We were already ancient when we taught your ancestors to reach for the stars. You have forgotten your history, but we remember everything." More human ships were appearing throughout the sector. Not just dozens or hundreds now, but thousands. They came from hiding places scattered across the galaxy. Ships that had waited in the cold darkness between stars. Vessels that had slept in pocket dimensions. Fleets that had been disguised as asteroids and dead moons. Captain Nora Briggs tried to count them and gave up. There were too many. Each one was a masterpiece of impossible engineering. Each one carried the weight of humanity's forgotten greatness. "The galaxy belongs to humanity," Eternal Vigilance announced to the scattered Council forces. "It always has? You were allowed to play at being rulers while we slept. That time is over. You can accept your proper place in the natural order, or you can be removed from it." The great lesson was complete. The young races had been reminded of who their true masters were. 3 days after the Council's defeat, Commander Jake Morrison found himself walking through corridors that seemed to stretch beyond what was physically possible. He was aboard Eternal Vigilance, and the ship was unlike anything he had ever experienced. The walls showed images from humanity's forgotten past. Pictures of humans using technology that bent the laws of physics. Ships crossing not just space, but time itself. Wars fought against creatures that seemed to be made of pure darkness. Your ancestors were not the first thinking species in this galaxy, the ship's voice explained as they walked. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, warm and patient, like a teacher with a favorite student. But they were the most determined to survive. When the Devourers came from the empty space between galaxies, every advanced civilization fell within decades. Every civilization except humanity. They entered a vast chamber where floating displays showed the galaxy as it had been 50,000 years ago. Jake could see hundreds of civilizations that no longer existed. Species that had built great empires spanning thousands of worlds, only to vanish completely from history. The galaxy had been full of life and wonder, and then it had all been swept away. What were the Devourers? Jake asked. Creatures of pure hunger, Eternal Vigilance replied. They consumed not just matter and energy, but the very concept of existence itself. Worlds they touched did not just die. They stopped having ever existed. Stars they fed on were erased from the memory of the universe. Entire species were removed from reality, so completely that no trace of them remained. Dr. Susan Walker was studying the impossible technology that surrounded them. Her scanners could not make sense of what they were detecting. How did humanity stop something like that? By making the greatest sacrifice any species has ever made, the ship answered. Your ancestors built weapons that could destroy the Devourers, but using them required humanity to step partially outside normal existence. Most of your species chose to enter a kind of sleep in other dimensions, waiting for the day when they would be needed again. New images appeared showing the final battle against the Devourers. Jake watched in awe as ancient human fleets fought creatures that looked like holes in space itself. Ships that could rewrite reality engaged enemies that could unmake everything they touched. The scale of the conflict was beyond anything Jake could imagine. A small population of humans remained behind, Eternal Vigilance continued. They were meant to ensure that human civilization would continue, but without access to the advanced technology. You are their descendants. You were supposed to rediscover your heritage slowly, over thousands of years, until you are ready to reclaim your place as the galaxy's guardians. Admiral Peter Collins joined them in the chamber. He had been reviewing reports from across human space, and his face showed the wonder of someone whose entire understanding of reality had been changed. The ancient facilities are active on every human world. We found manufacturing systems that can build starships in hours, defensive platforms that can protect entire solar systems, research stations containing knowledge that will advance our science by thousands of years. You are remembering what you always were, the ship said. The galaxy belongs to humanity, not through conquest, but through inheritance. You built it, protected it, and sacrificed everything to save it. Jake thought about the Galactic Council and their arrogant ultimatum. The other species, the ones that attacked us, what happens to them now? They will learn their proper place in the natural order, Eternal Vigilance replied. The Korath, the Vorthans, the Zelfani, and all the others. They are the descendants of species that served humanity in the ancient times. When your ancestors made their great sacrifice, these younger races inherited empty worlds and forgot their history. They convinced themselves they were the first to reach the stars. Captain Lisa Rodriguez had been quiet since boarding the ancient ship. The diplomat in her was trying to process the political implications of what they had learned. You're saying they were our servants originally? Not servants. Junior partners in a galactic community that humanity protected. When the Devourers were defeated and most of humanity withdrew from normal space, these species were left to govern themselves. Over thousands of generations, they forgot that they had ever answered to anyone else. More reports came in from across human space. Ancient ships were emerging from hiding places that had been concealed for millennia. Vessels that had been disguised as asteroids were revealing their true nature. Space stations that existed in pocket dimensions were returning to normal space. The true size of humanity's hidden fleet was becoming clear. How many ships are we talking about? Collins asked. In this galaxy alone, approximately 50,000 vessels of various types and capabilities, the ship replied. Command ships, battle cruisers, reality anchors, world builders, time ships, dimension gates, and others whose purposes your current language cannot adequately describe. Jake felt dizzy trying to imagine that many ancient warships, each one, was more powerful than anything the modern galaxy had ever seen. And they've all been waiting for this moment? Waiting and watching. We have observed your species' progress over the centuries. We have protected you from threats you never knew existed. We have guided your development in subtle ways to ensure you would be ready when the time came to reclaim your heritage. The chamber around them shifted, showing views of space outside the ship. Ancient human vessels were gathering in formations that stretched across light years. Some ships were the size of moons. Others seemed to exist as pure mathematics made physical. A few appeared to be built from crystallized time itself. What happens now? Rodriguez asked. Now humanity returns to its true nature, eternal vigilance. Answered, you will explore beyond this galaxy, seeking out new forms of life and consciousness. You will stand guard against the darkness that always lurks between the stars. You will be what you were always meant to be, the shepherds of creation itself. Susan was studying readings that showed energy patterns spanning the entire galaxy. The other species won't just accept this. Some of them will fight. Some will, the ship agreed. Others will remember the old stories their ancestors told. Stories they thought were myths about the great protectors who once walked among the stars. They will choose to accept guidance rather than face removal. Outside the ship, Jake could see the Galactic Council's survivors limping back toward their home systems. Their mighty fleets had been humbled in minutes. Their pride had been shattered. They would return to their people with news that would shake the foundations of their civilizations. The galaxy is about to change forever, Collins observed. The galaxy is about to return to what it was meant to be, eternal vigilance corrected. A garden tended by those wise enough and strong enough to protect it from the horrors that exist. In the dark spaces between the stars. As if summoned by those words, deep space sensors detected movement in the void beyond the galaxy's edge. Something vast and ancient was stirring in the darkness. The Devourers had been defeated, but not destroyed. And they had spent 50,000 years growing stronger in the cold emptiness. It seems our timing was perfect, the ship said with satisfaction. Humanity's return comes just in time for the next great test. The real war is about to begin. Jake looked out at the impossible fleet surrounding them and felt something he had never experienced before. Not just hope, but certainty. Humanity had been asleep for too long, but now they were awake. The galaxy had forgotten what humans were capable of, but it was about to remember. The age of humanity's true dominion was about to begin, and the stars themselves would tremble at their return.